Good afternoon, and welcome to Dartmouth College's 11th Annual Social Justice Awards. My name is Chris O'Connell, and I am a member of the Dartmouth College Class of 2013, and it is my honor and privilege today to serve as your Master of Ceremonies. Established by the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee in 2001, the Social Justice Awards recognizes alumni, faculty, staff, and student groups' commitment to many social issues, some of which we're going to learn about more today. Today's ceremony is co-sponsored by the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee, the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, the William Jewett Tucker Foundation, and Dartmouth Medical School. We have a great program for you all this afternoon, and to kick us off, I'm really excited to introduce the Dartmouth Rockapellas. The Rockapellas, often known as the Rocks, is an all-female a cappella group that uses song to raise awareness of social justice issues. Perfect fit for our ceremony today. So please join me at this time in welcoming the Dartmouth Rockapellas.
For when darkness clears, I know Can you hear the prayer of the children?
Thank you so much for the Dartmouth Rockapellas. The song that we just sang is called Prayer of the Children. The next song that we'll be singing is also a freedom song. It's called Ellis Song. It's written by Sweet Honey in the Rock, and it's based on the life and writings of civil rights activist Ella Baker.
Teaching others just to stand up and fight is the only way our struggle survives. We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
Oh, don't you rest, don't you rest.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice.
Thank you again to the Rockapellas. Well, I now have the privilege of introducing a man who probably needs no introduction, particularly here at the Social Justice Awards, but I already wrote one, so here it is. Dartmouth President Jim Yong Kim may only be in his third year as a college president, but his commitment to the ideals of access, inclusion, and justice have been clear throughout his entire professional career. As a respected physician and cultural anthropologist, he has worked to address injustices in the health system by providing medical treatment to underserved populations around the world. He is a co-founder of the global health group Partners in Health and previously served as the director of the Department of HIV and AIDS at the World Health Organization. His lifelong commitment to social justice in the medical world is a source of inspiration to the entire Dartmouth community. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming President Jim Yong Kim.
Thanks very much. This is a very special day, and we always look forward to it because we get to spend a little bit of time with the award winners. And I just want to, first of all, congratulate the different groups. Students for Africa, we're sitting here. You know, it's wonderful that we have a forum now. There's so many, you know, when I was a student back in the dark ages, there was nobody who got to go to Africa. There was nobody or very few people who knew much about it. And now that not only do we have so many students going there, but we have a forum where students can talk about their work. It's wonderful. Congratulations to you. And I want to also congratulate individually our emerging award, leadership award winners. Jessica Lawson is here, and Jessica told us in some detail about her path to getting where she is now with the Mariposa the foundation. It's really wonderful because you're working with 54 young girls, and they're often in the places that I've worked, places like Haiti, 3 countries in Africa, and Peru. It's the young girls who are often most neglected and forgotten. And I can think of no more rewarding work than actually knowing the names, the families, and the life paths of individual girls. And the fact that you've done that makes us very proud, Jessica. You were a consultant in San Francisco, right? One of the most beautiful, fun cities in the world. And you left it to go provide guidance and support for 54 very poor children in the Dominican Republic and young girls. It's just wonderful. Congratulations. Becca Heller has done really amazing work. Her career path, she was summa cum laude here at Dartmouth and then went on to Yale Law School. And in telling her story, the thing that was most striking to me was to hear how unbelievably courageous you were at every step of the process. So here, with nothing better to do, she went to Israel. And with nothing better to do there, she went to Amman, Jordan, to talk to Iraqi refugees. Right? Now, I don't know where you got that courage, Becca, but I have to say that you know, of all the people I've met doing this kind of work, the characteristic that always comes through is courage in the face of people who tell you that what you're trying to do is impossible. I mean, it's always there. And you took on a project in which there wasn't an established community that had been doing it. You basically created the field. But the fields that you go into where the people are most vociferous and telling you can't do what you're setting out to do are fields where there are already people working in it. Because at some level, they're thinking, look, if that was possible, we would have done it. That's the most difficult thing to get by. And you took on such an impossible project. It was so impossible, seemingly. Nobody had tried it before. So the work you've been doing trying to resettle Iraqi refugees, as you pointed out, we have quite a bit of responsibility in creating those refugees. And to know that it's a Dartmouth grad who's doing it makes us really, really proud. And Chiti Ativy, what a wonderful story. I mean, so Chidi went to Bard College, a place that's about as different from Dartmouth, I guess, as one could imagine, and then to medical school here. But Chidi really, and I was just saying this to him, he is one of the new cadre of physicians who are going to lead and who are going to change the way we provide health care. So here's a man who whose family is from Nigeria. Were you born in Nigeria?
Yes.
You were, yeah. And he came and went from a very comfortable and wonderful medical school here at Dartmouth to work in Houston, in some of the poorest neighborhoods in Houston. And he kept doing what was necessary to be most effective in being able to provide effective services to the poorest communities. So at first, you went and got a degree in public health. But then you realized that in order to really run a clinic, you needed training in business. And so you got an MBA from Yale. And I would argue that today, this path that you've taken is one that we now have to create and make it a lot easier for people to do. As I've said many, many times, in healthcare, it's not enough just to want to help poor people. It's not enough just to have good intentions. You've really got to humble yourself and go through a process so that you acquire the skills you need to actually be effective. And the stories that you've provided us, most doctors would go into a situation and focus only on the patient care. You focused on the quality of the programs. You focused on whether or not you should be doing a program at all. You focused on retiring the debt. All things that now that I've been in this job for 3 years are critical for an institution to survive. I think that you are going to be one of the great leaders in this new field of healthcare delivery. And the field of healthcare delivery is very straightforward. It's not about being better at spreadsheets. It's about taking the vast resources that we have and that we're already spending on healthcare and actually making people healthier, and not just a few people who can afford insurance, but everybody. That's the result of your work, and we couldn't be prouder to have you as part of our family. Michael Mascari graduated in 1965, which was right in the heart of the Animal House period of Dartmouth College. Michael came to Dartmouth from Indiana and followed a path that unfortunately very few people follow. His lifelong commitment to providing care and services for people with disabilities is truly humbling. You started at a time, Michael, when it wasn't very fashionable to do so. It was in the beginning of the deinstitutionalization movement, and we've all heard stories. Chiti Ativy, of course, is one of the movies that were just incredibly powerful in my life, and understanding the kinds of abuses that went on in institutions that cared for these people, for people with developmental disabilities. And so you've created homes and institutions which provided the kind of loving care that, of course, that they needed, and helped us to rethink our relationship to people with developmental disabilities. We're so proud of you, and the fact that you have a son now who's in the great class of 2013 closes the circle. Congratulations, Mark. Martin Luther King's celebration is a time for me every year to reflect on where I am and where we are as an institution. Martin Luther King said that the arc of history is long, but it bends ever so slightly toward justice. But I actually don't believe it. I don't believe that it bends toward justice on its own. We've been having a lot of discussions at this institution, and the students here have heard me say it so many times they're getting tired of hearing it. But I came here with a specific purpose. I told the Board of Trustees that the reason I'm coming here is because I believe this notion that the world's troubles are your troubles, and there's nothing wrong with the world that better human beings cannot fix. I believe that's the most powerful, inspiring, and frankly insightful mission statement that an institution like Dartmouth could ever have. And I want you to know that I'm really serious about it. And I'm asking myself every day, are we doing enough to prepare our students to tackle the world's troubles in a way that's as impressive and awe-inspiring as our honorees today? And I'm not sure we are, and I think we can get better. We're having speakers over the next couple of months who are at the bleeding cutting edge of how we learn, the bleeding cutting edge of understanding how we learn, how we get better, how we teach. Just last night we had a wonderful speaker from Duke who tells us that educational institutions of today are structured in a way that has far outlived its purpose. She told us that most educational institutions were structured to bring people from the fields into the factories, to make people more timely, more efficient, better at sitting in a classroom, as opposed to the kind of interaction that they had before the industrial age. Becca talked about this in terms of her own learning style, and she argues that what we see on the internet today, intensively interactive, where people publish before they, we're on blogs where they publish before they edit, the kind of intensive interaction and collaboration that we see today is in fact how our minds work. Well, that's great news for anyone interested in social justice, because that's what we do too. I want you to know that every year on Martin Luther King's birthday, I ask myself whether we're still on the right path, whether we're still on the path of unleashing every year 1,000+ undergraduate, recent graduates and graduate students who are both capable of and have instilled in them the desire to tackle the world's troubles. And every year, when we honor our alums who've done such extraordinary work, I'm convinced that we're on the right path, and I'm rededicating, I always am able to rededicate myself to this task of creating an institution that will do what President Dickey charged us to do in 1946. Congratulations, everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you again, President Kim. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize two individuals who really made today possible. So just for a moment, before we continue with our program, please join me in thanking Gabrielle Luke and Christy Crabb, who put a lot of work into that. I was invited to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for the Social Justice Awards last summer, before the specific date of the ceremony was nailed down. So, when I found out last term that the ceremony would be today, January 27th, I told Gabrielle that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it. And she listened to my concern and reasoning. She told me that I should reframe it. Rather than think of the Social Justice Awards as an event that I would be attending on my 21st birthday, that instead, I should consider it a giant college-sponsored birthday party. So, thank you so much for attending what has now been the largest birthday party I've ever had. So,
Happy birthday.
thank you. But in all seriousness, I am humbled to be here today among not only several accomplished and well-deserving alumni and student groups, but among others who believe that social justice, equity, diversity, and equality, some of the very same ideals that Dr. King stood for, are an integral part of Dartmouth's institutional fabric. The sheer number of nominees for these awards is enough proof that members of the Dartmouth community, a substantial amount that is, share these values and act them out in their everyday life. And for that, I'm proud and inspired to be a part of this great institution. I was asked to speak today, just briefly, not to worry, about what social justice means to me. The term social justice, in my mind, immediately conjures up images of volunteering in foreign countries, or serving soup to the hungry, or sending medicine to the sick. But after a few years at Dartmouth, I've come to realize that there's more to the term social justice than just volunteering or making a donation. So what is it? As luck would have it, this very question came up in my sociology class last week, and ladies and gentlemen, I have the answer. American philosopher John Rawls offered up this explanation of social justice. For a society to be socially just, imagine that the world as we know it ended tomorrow, and that everyone in this room was tasked with planning out a new society. According to Rawls, for us to truly create social justice, you and I, the planners of this new society, would have to be blind to our own social standing, so completely unaware of our own race, class, gender, sexual orientation, cultural background, and ability. As we sit together to plan out this new society, we'd force ourselves to create a world that is truly equal, purely out of fear that we'd end up on the wrong side of inequality. So, as Rawls believes, this hypothetical experiment reveals that social justice, put simply, is offering a fair starting place in life for people of all identities and backgrounds. Our award recipients this evening have certainly been working tirelessly to create that fair starting place in many different arenas within a society that is becoming increasingly stratified. And as I've learned more about these incredible individuals here with us today, one thing has become clear. Working for a fair and equitable starting place for all people, irrespective of their identity, takes more than just good intentions. To overcome the seemingly insurmountable structural barriers that slow the pace of equality, it takes courage. President Kim mentioned this earlier. Courage to question the norms, courage to use positions of power to promote equity, and the courage to not just acknowledge and empathize with inequality, but to act upon it. And while our honorees have done particularly exciting and inspiring work all over the world, social justice requires just as much courage whether you're across an ocean or down the street. As students, it's easy, almost too easy sometimes, to step away from certain injustices here at Dartmouth and accept it as a part of the way of life, the way society just is. But if we are to eventually affect the same sort of social change and promote the same ideals of equity, tolerance, and freedom that our honorees have done in their time away from Hanover, we must do more than just recognize or empathize with inequality. When injustice presents itself, even here on our beloved campus, we all have a responsibility to ourselves, to each other, to not just say something, to not just do the bare minimum required, but to stand up and relentlessly pursue the ideals we are celebrating here today. The courage to act upon inequality is not just some magical power that activates upon our graduation from Dartmouth. The courage to promote social justice begins here, and it begins now. Thank you. But I'm not finished yet. Before the award presentation begins, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the many student groups that were nominated for a Student Group Award this year. They include the Dartmouth newspaper, Dartmouth Habitat for Humanity, Dartmouth Humanitarian Engineering, Globe Med at Dartmouth, Mentors Against Violence, Outreach Peer Mentors, Occupy Dartmouth, Project Right Choice, and of course, Students for Africa. You'll find a list of all of these nominated groups toward the front of this evening's program. All of these groups have done highly valuable work for both the Dartmouth community and the greater community at large. So let's just take, once again, another moment to recognize all of the great work done by these student groups. Our first award this afternoon will be the Student Group Award, which is sponsored by the MLK Celebration Committee, the Tucker Foundation, Dartmouth Medical School, and the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity. So this time, I would like to introduce Dean of the College, Charlotte Johnson. Dean Johnson joined the Dartmouth community this past summer, and in her first few months has worked closely with many students and student groups to further promote the value of social justice on our campus. She's excited to present her first Student Group Social Justice Award, so please join me in welcoming Dean Charlotte Johnson.
Thank you, Chris, and happy birthday. So it's my honor today to be here and present this award. It's, as Chris said, it's the Martin Luther King Jr. Social Justice Award. And it's for a student organization, and it honors a student group for its commitment to promoting social justice in our community and beyond. This year we are honoring the organization Students for Africa. Students for Africa was founded in 2006 in response to the then nearly invisibility of African affairs on the Dartmouth campus. Since then, it has worked tirelessly to remind the Dartmouth community of the continent's diversity and complexity. SFA does not content itself with simply raising awareness about Africa's challenges. Rather, it seeks to foster critical thinking about how our everyday choices impact those challenges. It aims to foster dialogue about the economic and political issues, to tackle issues of social justice and development, and to showcase and share African culture. To these ends, SFA has hosted roundtable discussions, documentary film screenings, potlucks, and performances. These events have ranged from in-depth discussions of Zimbabwe's cholera epidemic to celebratory occasions such as Africa Night. In terms of social justice and development, SFA has sought to raise the level of discussion about what it means to help Africa, calling for greater humility among themselves and their fellow students, as well as intensified coalition building with African-based partners. Several SFA members translate their ideals into practice through their efforts to promote and sustain educational and health initiatives in their home countries. Last fall, SFA took on the ambitious task of organizing Mbele Africa, a convention that brought students from many colleges together to discuss ways in which youth can contribute to African development. Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf addressed the participants via video conferencing, urging them to, and I quote, "take advantage of this opportunity to unfailingly seek knowledge, inquire, question, dream, innovate, explore, and more importantly, give back," end quote. We believe that SFA has already begun to answer President Sirleaf's call to action through its energetic and sustained efforts to address Africa's challenges as well as celebrate its richness. For those reasons, we are proud to recognize and honor Students for Africa with the Social Justice Award. Would everyone present who has been involved with Students for Africa please stand? And I'd like to invite you up actually so that I can present the award. So come on up. Stella Safari, Mahmoud Johnson, and I'm missing one person here. I'll let you introduce yourselves. What about that?
Hi, my name is Stella Safari, and I'm the co-president of SFA.
I'm Vivian Ramos, and I'm operations coordinator for SFA.
My name is Mahmoud Johnson, and I'm also co-president of SFA.
It's my pleasure to present you with the Social Justice Award for Student Organizations. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to welcome someone who is very important to Dartmouth. Her role in our community is a critically important one, particularly as we discuss and hear more about social justice issues this afternoon. Vice President for Institutional Diversity and Equity, Evelynn Ellis, is an individual who works tirelessly with students, faculty, staff, and senior administrators to promote social justice throughout the college. Here to present the Alumni Awards, please join me in welcoming Vice President Evelynn Ellis.
First, I should check. Can everyone hear me? I'm close enough to. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you for coming out. As I told someone who was interviewing a prospective faculty member today, and I'm looking outside, and he's looking outside, and I said very quickly, the weather is never like this. But thank you. Over the winter break in 2010, Holly Satea moved into full retirement, along with leaving many memories and unlimited information in boxes about Dartmouth College. Holly decided to also leave me 3 live plants. That would be live plants. Nothing in my past would have suggested to Holly that I could keep plants alive, having killed the 2 I purchased when I moved into my office at Dartmouth College. I remember telling Holly that leaving them with me was risky, but I would love to keep them and would try my best to keep them alive. With little fanfare, Holly gave me some care instructions about taking care of the plants and floated out of the office. One of the plants was of particular concern for me because it appeared to be a favorite of Holly. She liked it a lot. And it appeared as though she had put a lot of care into taking care of it, keeping it alive. I figured it would be my first failure as vice president. Dead plant. I went through in advance in my mind the words I would use when I called her at her home to tell her that the dear thing was dead. But then I remembered how little concern she expressed when she turned them over to me. For some reason, she believed that I could grow a green thumb. I, too, could be the keeper of the plants. As the weeks progressed, the plants and I developed an understanding. You tell me if you are dying, and I will try to save you. They sent messages, and I responded like a true gardener. As time moved on, I grew more confident. After a while, I could get ahead of them, putting in a bit of water before they sent out the stress signals. I was rocking. After a full year under my care, I have not yet killed one. I believe Holly knew that when she left them with me, hand me the responsibility. Despite my plant-carrying disability, I would rise to the occasion. So far, I have. I suppose that our awardees today were handed or they reached out and took responsibility. And they have, too, risen to the occasion. And for that, we honor each of them. I will begin the presentation of the individual Social Justice Awards. To tell you a bit about them, the Social Justice Awards were originally conceived to honor members of our community and provide us with a venue in which we may acknowledge and reflect on their accomplishments. They are presented tonight in 3 categories: emerging leadership, ongoing commitment, and the Lester B. Granger Award for Lifetime Achievement. Sounds like the Oscars, doesn't it? And they're just as important to us here at Dartmouth. The honorees' names have been engraved and added to the plaque by the stage, which is displayed throughout the year on the wall outside of Ellis Cafe. Each award recipient will be given a clock inscribed with his or her name and an engraving of Dartmouth Hall. The gift of a clock was inspired by a quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. We must use time creatively and the knowledge that the time is always right to do right. The presentation of these awards will be followed by a panel discussion with the honorees about their lives and their careers in service. I will start with the first awardee, Rebecca Heller. Rebecca Heller is a member of the Dartmouth class of 2005. She's the co-founder and director of the Iraqi Refugee Assistance Project and is a visiting clinical lecturer at Yale College. Rebecca is receiving the first of the 2 Emerging Leadership Awards. Today, she returns to this very stage 8 years after having served as the MC for this very event. She was chosen for that role in 2004 due to her commitment to issues of social justice, which were evident from the beginning of her Dartmouth career. As a first-year student, she founded a mentoring project serving at-risk students at an elementary school in Sharon, Vermont. Continuing her commitment to youth, Rebecca interned with the Children's Defense Fund, where she briefed policymakers on issues of child welfare and organized a Child Watch event in which the U.S. senators worked directly with at-risk youth. Perhaps Rebecca's greatest achievement as an undergraduate was the founding of Harvest for Hunger, a project which had its roots in her academic research on food security issues. This project trained student and community volunteers to harvest leftover fruits and vegetables from the local fields. With the help of a professional kitchen, a chef, and a nutritionist, they transformed the produce into nutritious frozen meals and distributed them to low-income residents. For these efforts, Rebecca was awarded one of the 6 national Howard R. Schreyer Student Humanitarian Awards. She was also awarded a Tucker Foundation Fellowship to study and work in the area of food security in New Zealand, Nicaragua, and Grenada. After graduating summa cum laude, she spent 2 years living in sub-Saharan Africa, one as a Fulbright scholar in Malawi. After her first year at Yale Law School, Rebecca traveled to Jordan, where she visited with refugee families who identified legal assistance as their most urgent need. Rebecca has recently done asylum work with Yale's Immigration Legal Services Clinic and believed that law students could assist refugees applying for resettlement. Returning to Yale, she co-founded the Iraqi Refugee Assistance Project, IRAP, in 2009. Also during law school, how could someone so young have done so much? Also during law school, Rebecca participated in several clinics focusing on worker and immigrant rights, advocacy services, and on international human rights. She also served as an article editor for Yale Journal. She received her JD, congratulations, in 2010. Since then, she has helped IRAP expand to include chapters at 20 law schools worldwide. Her organization has helped hundreds of refugee families through the resettlement progress to restart their lives in safer countries. What I also learned today is that she received from the Christian Science Monitor, and Rebecca, tell me if I get this correct, one of the top 30 persons who are considered change agents in this country.
Wow. Under the age of 30.
Under the age of 30.
Thank you.
I got it mostly right?
Yeah, you did. I didn't want to offend everyone else in the room.
Thank you for sharing. For these reasons and many others, we are privileged to honor Rebecca Heller with Dartmouth Social Justice Award for Emerging Leadership. Please help me welcome Rebecca to the stage.
The cue sheet says I have under 1 minute to thank people. So number one, thank you, Dartmouth, for this great honor, for being awesome, for taking such good care of me for so long. I would love to make my children go here, but I would love more not to be a parent who forces their kids to go to their Ivy League school. Thank you, President Kim, for your vision for Dartmouth, which I think is needed. And I especially want to thank the Tucker Foundation, where I basically lived while I was here, and specifically Tracy Dustin Eichler and Jan Tarjan, who exhibited many qualities with me, including encouragement and empowerment, but I would say most of all, patience. So thank you so much.
Now I will present the second Emerging Leadership Award, and that award will go to Jessica Lawson. Jessica is a member of the class of 2004. She's a co-founder and assistant director of the Mariposa DR Foundation of the Dominican Republic. As a special language and culture major at Dartmouth, she studied the strife that the people of the Dominican Republic suffered at the hands of the dictator Trujillo and the ensuing political discord. Vacationing there in Cabarete in 2003, she fell in love with the island, but she was also saw firsthand the severe disadvantages and extreme poverty its residents faced, especially women and girls, who received minimum education and had virtually no job opportunities. Determined to help create a positive change, Jessica returned to Karate after graduating. There she began her career in nonprofit leadership as a full-time volunteer in a rural public school where she ran a library and created extracurricular programs for at-risk youth. She next spent several years in management consulting in the U.S., working with several public sector clients to help their leaders inspire passion and performance in their people. 2008, Jessica returned full-time to the Dominican Republic as a nonprofit consultant. In partnership with Patricia Suriel, she developed the concept of the Mariposa DR Foundation and has become an advocate for girls' education and empowerment. The Mariposa DR Foundation is a community-run organization that works to provide sustainable and creative solutions to ending extreme poverty in the Dominican Republic. It focuses primarily on empowering girls to achieve their full potential through programs in education, sports, health, and leadership, as well as partnerships with schools, community centers, and early childhood development programs. Why girls and women? Women, as Jessica has explained, are the foundation of a developing community. To increase women's sense of self-worth through education simultaneously creates a higher set of expectation for those the women care for, and this begins to permeate through the entire community. This is the change that Jessica's leadership is affecting. As one of her 3 nominators said, her commitment to her foundation is best perceived through the happy eyes, the eager minds, and full stomachs of the girls she works with. And there are more than a few. She is probably the most popular woman in Cabarete. Another nominator said that Jessica dreams bigger than those around her and works harder to make the impossible happen. She has certainly done this through the Mariposa DR Foundation. And for this work, we are honored to present her with a Social Justice Award for Emerging Leadership. Please help me welcome Jessica to the stage.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Dartmouth. I'd like to thank my incredible friends that I met here who nominated me for this award and who also supported me in every crazy idea that I ever had. I'd like to thank Patricia Suriel, their founder and executive director of the Mariposa Foundation, who inspired me to join the fight against social injustice. And most of all, I'd like to thank my family who came here from Chicago to be here with me tonight. Without their support, I never could do anything that I've been able to do. So thank you very much.
And Jessica, before you get too settled, I'm going to try it again. Cabarete?
Cabarete.
Cabarete. Okay, give me 16 more tries. Our next award is the Ongoing Commitment Award, and our recipient today is Chiti Achebe. Chidi is a member of the Dartmouth Medical School class of 1996, is the president and CEO of the Harvard Street Neighborhood Health Center in Dorchester, Massachusetts. After graduating from Bard College, he earned 3 graduate degrees an MPH at the Harvard School of Public Health, an MBA at the Yale School of Management, and of course his MD at DMS, Dartmouth Medical School. Truly an underachiever. He completed residencies in both internal medicine and pediatrics and has held positions as medical director at the Whittimer Street Health Center in Roxbury and as an assistant professor at the Tufts University School of Medicine. Shortly before Chidi took the helm at the Harvard Street, the Dorchester Health Center had nearly been forced to close. Its facilities were inadequate, its staff were demoralized, and a consultant had stolen $750,000. Not good. Even without the theft, its finances were in terrible disarray. The place was even such a mess, says Chidi, that the door was falling off of the hinges. We had to put the door on the hinges and paint it. His leadership turned the center around in record time, bringing it from a bankrupt organization to one that is now in the black. All this time, Chidi served as a tireless advocate of healthcare quality, both through his work in these underserved Boston area communities and through publishing articles and serving on boards and committees dedicated to addressing issues of healthcare disparity. On the front lines, he has regularly made church calls, spoken at youth summits, conventions, conferences, schools, and barbershops, focus areas where he could reach underserved patients and remind the community of the value of health and of preventive care. He lets them know how easily care is available at the center and has made the center a welcoming place where residents now feel comfortable going. In recognition of his ceaseless work on behalf of healthcare equality, Dartmouth is deeply honored to present Chidi with the Social Justice Award for ongoing commitment. Please welcome Chiti Ativy.
The only thing I can say is wow. I told a very short story earlier. We had the honor of having lunch with President Kim, who is one of my heroes, with Paul Farmer. I hope Sweden is listening, because we all know he deserves a Nobel. This is a school that students may not realize how special it is. When I left Dartmouth, I knew while I was here that it was a superb school. I didn't know how superb until I left. It prepares you for things that you may not be aware of until you leave. And I think it's one of those incredible gifts to have a world-class education that then prepares you to give back to people who may not have the same opportunities as you. And I think the only thing I can take away or give to the students who may be listening here is to remember how privileged you are, and to always remember to give back to those who don't have as much as you have, because boy, you have a lot. I'd like to also make sure that I thank those who nominated me. Swan Hennessy, she's still here. Yes, Sean, Dr. Donald, a bunch of others people. I had a superb education here. President Kim, thank you. The Dean, thank you so much. The Dean, 2 deans. I just want to say thank you for this honor. It's deeply, deeply heartfelt. And I am always going to be very, very grateful.
Now, we have made our way to the Lester B. Granger Award for Lifetime Achievement. The Granger Award was originated by the William Jewett Tucker Foundation in 2002 and was made a part of the Social Justice Awards ceremony for the first time in 2005. It is named in honor of Lester B. Granger, class of 1918. It is given each year to individuals whose commitment to public service has been exemplary as Granger's own. Further details on Granger's extraordinary life and work can be found in this evening's printed program. This year's awardee is Michael Mascari. Michael is a member of the class of 1965. He is the executive director of AHRC, Nassau and Affiliates. AHRC Nassau is Long Island's largest nonprofit agency serving children and adults with intellectual and other developmental disabilities, including autism. After graduating from Dartmouth, Michael spent a year in the Vista program, the Domestic Peace Corps. He went on to earn a master's degree in social work administration from Case Western Reserve University. In 1969, he became the community residence manager in the first group home for adults with developmental disabilities. Michael's nominator, Howard Jewett, wrote that since that time, Michael has devoted his career to advancing the civil rights and supporting the human dignity of persons with intellectual and other developmental disabilities. When asked why he entered this field over 40 years ago, Michael always answers that it was for him, and continues to be, an issue of civil rights. Michael entered public service as the assistant director, and I'm going to use the names of the organizations as they were at that time. The assistant director for the mental retardation services for New York City. He was next appointed assistant commissioner for both the New York City Department of Mental Health, Mental Retardation, and Alcoholism Services, and the New York State Office of Mental Retardation, eventually becoming its associate commissioner. During this time, he led the initial phases of the implementation of the Willowbrook Consent Decree, creating a community-based system of supports for persons with developmental disabilities who formerly lived in state institutions. New York State is still regarded as having the most ambitious plan for relocating individuals from institutions to community-based programs. Michael went on to successfully oppose citizens groups who tried to prevent people with developmental disabilities from moving into community-based housing. Under Michael's leadership, AHRC Nassau has grown from serving about 500 individuals to more than 4,000. It has been designated a Compass agency by the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, one of 8 out of nearly 750 to receive this designation, which is given to organizations that foster the empowerment of the person receiving the services, supporting their choices and their preferences. In sum, when Michael began his career on behalf of people with developmental disabilities, their future was limited throughout our society. There was no right to education for children with developmental disability and no legal protections within the workforce. The changes Michael was able to effect during his service furthered this population's civil rights and advanced the societal shift and preconceptions many held about them. Michael's ability to marshal community resources and his steadfast resolve to fight for the rights of the disabled has supported a generation of people with developmental disabilities on their continuing journey to live fully free within our society. For his unwavering dedication to advancing the rights of people with developmental disabilities, we are honored indeed to present Michael with the Lester B. Granger Award for Lifetime Achievement. Please help me welcome Michael to the stage.
I accept this award with a deep sense of gratitude and humility, as well as respect and admiration for the other recipients whose accomplishments are being recognized today. I'm especially honored to accept an award that is named for Lester B. Granger, whose life is an example for Dartmouth students and alumni of what it means to make the world's troubles your own. By learning about the life of Lester Granger, class of 1918, we are reminded that there have always been graduates of Dartmouth College who have pursued paths that differ from the majority of their classmates. But we take great pride in our graduates who have distinguished careers in finance, law, business, and medicine. We should take equal pride in those who have chosen the profession of social work, teaching, community organizing, and the ministry. It is right that we celebrate those graduates, such as those standing here with me, who have used their Dartmouth education to work for governmental, nonprofit, and religious institutions on behalf of people whose needs are too often unmet. Thank you very much.
Now we get to the fun part. We get to talk to them. We now have a panel discussion where we will get to, first of all, hear the panelists address 4 questions, and then we have the opportunity to ask them questions. And each panelist will have about 5 minutes to answer 4 questions. Sorry about that. Talk really fast. No, but 4 questions, and I will tell you the questions now, and feel free to ask me if you don't remember them. But question number 1, what have you most wanted to change through your life's work? Question number 2, did your passion for social justice have roots in your Dartmouth experience? Question number 3, what one lesson have you learned about social change that you would like to share with younger people and even older people like me? And how do you sustain the passion that you bring to your work? We will go in this order. We will start with Rebecca. We then go to Jessica, Chidi, and then Michael.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to sit kind of far from the mic because I'm pretty loud, so if people can't hear me, just say something. I feel like it's impossible to answer those 4 questions in 5 minutes, and in deciding what I wanted to say, I had a choice between presenting a coherent narrative and presenting a lot of ideas, and I went with the latter. So the title is Things I Wish Someone Had Told Becca when she was a student at Dartmouth. Becca, growing up is difficult because you realize that you have to make choices. I think that when you're a teenager and you think about social change, it really seems possible that you could change the whole world because you haven't had to pick. And a really difficult thing to do is that as you grow up, you realize that your focus has to narrow. And I remember Tracy reminded me today that when I was having this conversation with her in her office, that we had the same conversation, 1,700 years ago. When I realized that I couldn't end all world problems and I had to settle for just like ending world hunger. And ultimately it sort of gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And what I want to say in response to the question of what I most want to change with my life's work is that it doesn't matter. That there's a lot of things that need to change. That disability rights, women's empowerment, access to public health, immigration law, all of these things need people to take the lead and to make them change. And in the end, you'll stumble into something or you'll pick something that's compelling for you, and that'll be your issue. And also that you won't be able to change all of it, and that'll be a hard thing to come to grips with, Becca. that you'll need to sort of get over the role of your own ego in the work and realize that life is short and you're going to put in what you can, and then someone else is going to have to take over for you. I think another important choice that you're going to have to make is a choice about whether you want to work from inside the system or from outside the system. In going to law school, I feel like I made the choice to work from inside the system. I have like 6 lawsuits pending against the Department of Homeland Security, but they're all within a legal system that I am not fighting in a broad sense, however unjust I personally may think that it is. I remember when the US invaded Iraq and 1 billion people protested and it slowed the tanks none. I spent a while, in fact 8 years, kind of righteously proclaiming the death of the protest as the traditional effective form of social movement. You know, I was like, it's the era of the professional activists. We all will have many degrees, and protesting is dead, which of course this year proved me wrong in like 80,000 different ways. And I ended up spending a fair amount of time at Occupy Wall Street because my boyfriend is a lawyer for the New York Civil Liberties Union. And it was really moving to me, but at first I sort of bought the New York Times narrative of Occupy as this like disembodied group of people who were disaffected for different reasons sort of coming together and not really having a common message. And then I read a column by Glenn Greenwald, I don't know if people read him, but you should, where he was basically like, look, anyone who says that they don't know what the message of Occupy is basically full of it. The message of Occupy Wall Street is that the distribution of wealth in this country is really messed up and that something in the economic system needs to change. And it's a really basic message, and I think it's actually been massively successful. You heard Obama in the State of the Union talking about the 99% versus the 1%. And the truth is that me and Occupy Wall Street need each other. There has to be someone outside the system fighting against the injustices in the system as a whole, and then there has to be someone inside the system that can implement the change that they have covered to do from the people outside. And if you pick one or the other, it doesn't mean that you're less rebellious or more responsible, because both are really equally necessary. Becca, don't get intellectually lazy. Whatever you are working on, you need to constantly be reflecting on your own work. You need to get up every morning and say, yes, I can do this, but you can't say, yes, I can do this, I can do this. I think a lot of efforts to make things better are not well thought out enough or are based too much on individual ego and end up missing the boat, or often, I think, making things worse. I think you have to be adaptable, that if you're really ambitious in your social justice efforts, crazy stuff is going to fly at you all the time. Stuff like this is still really surreal to me, and you have to be flexible enough in your work and the way that you think about your work and your approach to your work that you can be responsive to changes, that the earthquake in Haiti can happen and you can adapt what you're doing to take that into account, or that if you make a mistake, you can learn from the mistake to alter your work. If you're trying to change something really big, a lot of people are going to try to convince you that you're wrong. What the status quo wants more than anything is to remain the status quo, and people will tell you that your idea for change is unnecessary and that it's inefficient and that you're naive. And Becca, the biggest thing that I want to tell you that you should keep in mind as you try to do this work is that you are right and they are wrong.
Thank you, Rebecca. And now we will have Jessica.
I'm sorry, can you read the questions one more time?
Yes, I can. I have them right here. What have you most wanted to change through your life's work? Did your passion for social justice have roots in the Dartmouth experience? One lesson you have learned about social change that you would like to share with younger people and older people? How do you sustain the passion that you bring to your work?
Okay, well, those are definitely difficult questions to answer in 5 minutes. I think personally what I would like to see change is I think across the world, girls living in poverty are often thought of as a problem. They are the most undervalued, underserved, neglected population on earth, but they have the unique power to change things because they're going to be the future mothers, the future caretakers of the children. So investing that time, that energy, that attention in them is what I believe is really going to change things. And I think what's very exciting about the work that I'm doing is I get to see the results. and things are changing. I think choosing this career in social justice was not something that I planned. I took kind of a hard turn in my career path. But one thing that I did learn at Dartmouth was that this place is not necessarily about getting a good education and going out there and getting yourself a great job. What it taught me was how to prepare myself with the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to recognize opportunity and seize it. And that's something invaluable, and I think that's something that is unique to this institution. I'm sorry, what were the other two?
The last two, one lesson you learned about social change.
Oh, okay. So one thing I learned about social change is that anybody can do it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. When I first went down to the Dominican Republic, I was horrified, I was scared, I didn't know what I was going to do, there were so many problems, but you start to notice that you just have to pick one thing and go with it, and never doubt that that one thing can have a ripple effect and make a big difference. And what you will notice is that you start doing that one thing and other people start noticing what you're doing, and before you've noticed, you've mobilized an entire group of people to join your cause, and you'll have more support than you ever imagined. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I've learned, is to never think that you can't change something, because you can.
How do you keep your passion alive?
Well, that's easy. But definitely, you know, I have to say it makes me really happy to wake up every morning and never have that thought, I don't want to go to work today. I wake up every morning just thrilled to be able to do what I'm doing, and what keeps me passionate is that there's just so much more to be done, and there's just so much more out there. Like right now I'm full-time in the Dominican Republic, but I'm like, man, I don't have enough years to get everywhere else in the world that I want to go. There's just so many girls out there. So it's not hard to stay inspired at all. Definitely waking up every morning and going and seeing those girls' faces, and know on a personal level what they're dealing with, and visiting their homes, and seeing them fighting for their education and fighting for every little opportunity and showing up, you know, no matter what's going on for them in their home, in their school, in their family. That's definitely what keeps me inspired.
I clearly understand.
Hello, everyone. I think what I'll do is, I don't think I'll follow the format. Forgive me for being a bit of a rebel here. I think that what I'd like to see change is what I see as a continuum. The healthcare problem is not just a U.S. problem, it's a worldwide problem. And I think that two of my former professors at the Harvard School of Public Health, Channing and Bloom, were very clear about the link between healthcare status and economic viability of communities. I think what is clear, and should be clear to everyone, and I said this to a group a couple of years ago, is you should care that 50 million Americans don't have insurance, because if they develop, and President Kim knows this very well, this is his work, if they develop multi-resistant tuberculosis that nothing can treat, it'll come to your doorstep. It is in our vital interest that every American is healthy, not only because they are then able to be productive and therefore help the economy. Everybody knows how hard things are. The burden of disease around chronic diseases is putting an unbearable weight on our resources. We need to make sure that our children are healthy so that they don't develop chronic illnesses that then cost us an arm and a leg. Most of these things are preventable, and so I don't think that there needs to be more and more billions spent, but that the money is spent in a very intelligent way. So it's not really working harder, it's working smarter. In terms of where my the bug for social justice started. I think I would say that my dad has spent his entire life fighting social injustice. And so for me, that's where I got that. I thought it was natural, like ABC. He hasn't always been popular. Currently, he's been blacklisted by the Nigerian government for making statements and siding with the masses over subjugation. He has been under a great deal of watches and all sorts of things. So it's not always sexy. People remember, oh, your dad wrote this and he's famous. Well, that's only one part of the story. The other part of the story is sometimes he's running for his life. And so working in the arena of social justice is not always very clean or comfortable. In the introduction, they mentioned the fact that one of the things that we did at our health center was clean the place up. I took a job to turn around a hopelessly situated health center that was bankrupt, essentially. And I was told by the Commissioner of Public Health, Chidi, with all your fancy degrees, I'm giving you 2 years. Can't do this, we're closing it down. And then the thing that kept me going every day was I would wake up and think of the 53,000 patient visits that we need, patients who have nowhere else to go. And then thinking of all the ammunition I've been given by my teachers at 4 incredible institutions, and saying to myself, let's gather the intellectual capital to make this work. So the first thing we did was to gather some of the smartest people that I could convince to take a cut in their salaries and come and work for a community health center because it was important to do, not because it was the best job in the world. Especially in Boston, that's very expensive. We achieved that, and I think that the board that we have now is absolutely superb. We have people who are that have been recruited from every profession on the planet. Service, I think for me, is the calling that I will try to continue to remind myself that is my calling on earth, is to serve others. And servant leadership as the CEO of a health center means that you don't see yourself as the boss, but the person who can also help the janitor clean the toilet, and then go to the boardroom and talk to them about the fiscal situation. Thank you.
Are you going to be a rebel? Are you going to answer my question?
I'm going to try to answer your question, but let me say, for someone who's received a Lifetime Achievement Award, it's very tempting to sort of wander down memory lane here and talk about what it was like 50 years ago at Dartmouth, or what I've been doing over the past 40 years. So for your sake, and for the sake of brevity, I have put down some remarks, and I do think it falls within the 5 minutes, so if you'll bear with me. In commenting on how my Dartmouth education led me to work for social justice, let me begin by saying I came to Dartmouth from a small town in Indiana. I was the first in my family to receive a college education, and being at Dartmouth truly opened a new world of ideas and opportunities that I never really knew existed. Coming from a modest family background, I left Dartmouth with the sense that I had been privileged to receive an educational opportunity that remained unavailable to so many others who were just as deserving. I graduated with the sense that a Dartmouth education does bring with it a sense of obligation and responsibility to use one's education and talents, whatever they might be, to make a difference in the lives of others. While I regret that I didn't join the Freedom Riders from Dartmouth or attend the Great March on Washington, I was inspired by those seminal events that occurred during my college years. Perhaps studying history at Dartmouth opened my eyes to the unstoppable forces of change that were occurring in this country in the 1960s. The fight against ignorance and poverty and injustice led by Dr. King stimulated another group of people to demand their civil rights. When applying for my first job out of graduate school, I heard parents of children with disabilities talking about their movement, and that presented me with an opportunity to join the struggle for social justice on behalf of their children who were truly living in a segregated society. In reflecting on what I've most wanted to change through my life's work, I need to describe perhaps what conditions were like when I started in the field in the 1960s. For example, children diagnosed with severe mental retardation were not entitled to public education in most states in this country. Employment opportunities were almost non-existent. Because they were left untreated, the life expectancy for Americans with Down syndrome was less than 50. Parents had only two choices for residential placement: to have their son or daughter stay at home with them with no services or supports, or to place them in a horrific and isolated state institution. At Willowbrook, the notorious state school in New York City that I helped to close, people were subjected to physical abuse and neglect, were denied medical and dental care, and were human subjects in medical experiments without their consent. The social change that I sought was for society to view people with developmental disabilities for who they are as people. While I consider myself fortunate to have played a part in the transition from a segregated system of supports to a community-based system, it was a grassroots movement started by parents, along with the help from sympathetic persons in the media and the legislatures, that was the real impetus for the dramatic changes that occurred. The organizations begun then by parents such as the ones for which I work now carry on the legacy of their founders in ensuring that high-quality services and supports are in place to prevent a return to the horrors of a Willowbrook. In a powerful self-advocacy movement, the disabled children of those parents have now taken up the banner and are marching on state houses and serving on the boards of those same organizations. My lesson for those of you who are starting the field of social justice is that lasting change is possible when the people organize themselves. Take a look at the American Civil Rights Movement, the Disability Rights Movement, Arab Spring, and Occupy Wall Street movement. Professionals who work directly with persons who are affected by an issue can never claim full credit for affecting social change. There are potential leaders among those being served who must be nurtured and heard. Remember that ordinary people can oftentimes accomplish extraordinary things. Finally, what sustains my passion is that every day when I go to work, I know that I have a chance to make a difference in someone's life. As wonderful as the Dartmouth experience is, I've learned that some of life's most important lessons from people who have limited capacity to read or write or even to speak. Nonetheless, they have enormous ability to teach others how to be compassionate, to appreciate one's friends and families, to overcome challenges, and to live life in the moment. I count as my partners those family members who have devoted their lives and sacrificed their careers not only to care for their own son or daughter with a severe disability, but to make the world a better place for every parent and person with a disability. Let me end my remarks with a few words from a poem that Robert Frost delivered one cold winter's night in Webster Hall during my freshman year. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Wonderful. I am honored to share the stage with four of you. Before I turn you over to the audience, because they get to ask you questions, I want to make you two promises. The first one I'm less secure on. The first one is, I will keep the plants alive. The second one is, we will work as hard as we can at Dartmouth College to make you as proud as you make us. Now, we will turn the floor. There are mics, I believe. You get to ask questions. Make your questions brief. Be nicer to our speakers than we were. Don't ask them 4 questions. And we can get started now. Don't be shy.
One more time. There we go. Thank you all for being here. Really an honor and a pleasure. The word tireless came up a number of times from our introducers, and I have this guess that none of you are actually tireless in your work, and I'm wondering what you do to bring balance to your life, or what you do when you do get tired to take care of yourselves, to sustain yourself for the good work that you're doing.
I can go first. For me, whenever I find myself getting tired or frustrated or oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore, I have too much. I take a day off and I go and I spend some time with some of the families in the community that I live. And that's what gives me energy, is because I go in there and they invite me into their home and they have nothing, and they'll give you everything that they have, and you see what they're dealing with, and you know, it could be raining and their roof's broken and there's 10 people sleeping in the same bed and they have no food and no running water and no bathroom, and it's the most destitute and dire and horrible situation, yet they have a smile on their face and they're thrilled to see that you came and visit their family. And I always leave there going, no matter how tired and annoyed and frustrated I am, I'll never have to deal with that. So that's what gives me my energy.
I have an excellent therapist.
Well, I sort of have an excellent therapist too. It's my wife who makes sure that not all my time is spent doing work. But one other thing I would say, you know, we just happen to be Quakers, and one of the forms of Quaker worship, but it can be used by anybody, is silence. And I think, you know, learning to respect silence and taking time to be silent is also another way to at least clear your thoughts.
My wife is here, so I think I need to be nice to her. But she's always been a reminder about getting a life outside work. So I think that her presence, her wisdom, she's a physician, she's like 10 times smarter than I am. And I think going back to her with ideas has always been something that's helped me keep going. But also we have 3 little boys. And there's nothing that brings down your blood pressure by 20 points than having somebody run down the hall yelling "Daddy." So I think for me, it's the family that I go home to with great joy.
Hi, thank you guys for everything you've done. I'm very, very impressed and really appreciative. My question revolves, there's probably no easy answer to this. Of course, no easy answer to any of these questions, but I and my wife graduated from Dartmouth, and my wife is a social worker, and I'm a photographer. I say that, you know, she deals with our karma side, so I can go take pictures. But one of the issues that we've had, and especially both of us having attended Dartmouth, is, as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with an education like this. And there's also a lot of financial considerations. It's very expensive to go to a school like this and to follow it on. So, you know, I really respect people who decide to take a path for the social good, foregoing possible higher income. But I'm wondering how it's possible, and this is not for anyone in particular, but how it's possible to balance the needs to, you know, pay back your loans and buy a house and have a life and still do, you know, good things, and really put our education to good use. And I know it's a very difficult thing because it's a big balance, and I'm wondering, have you found ways where people can, you know, live a comfortable life, you know, financially without those pressures and still be able to provide good for the public?
I see an answer.
Yeah, go to medical school. And let me tell you why. I'm not kidding. One of the health centers, the health center movement, is plugged into the National Health Service Corps. The National Health Service Corps, as you may know, is a movement that was started in the 60s, precisely because we needed to distribute physicians in areas of need. What they do is, while you're working in underserved areas, they pay off your loans. So I said to a medical student, he thought I was crazy, I said, burrow until you can't breathe and go and work. And while you're working, apply to the National Health Service Corps, go to the Delta, Mississippi, go to Louisiana. You're not going to New York, okay? You're going to places that where once you arrive, they have a festival because there's a doctor in town. And we've had friends who've been there who don't ever want to leave. So I think that the reason this country remains the greatest nation on earth is that it's had a history of incredibly smart people think of ways to solve problems. And I think that if we stop bickering with each other and use that incredible gift that we've been given over the years from Providence, we will be able to solve a number of the problems you're saying. And this is just one example.
I have two thoughts. One is that you could go to law school. And this is actually, I'll challenge you on this, President Kim. Most of the top law schools in the country now have loan repayment programs where if you go into public service following law school, the school will pay off your loans. And the purpose behind that is not just to encourage more people to do public service, but so that not only rich people can go into public service careers. So I think one awesome way to encourage people to come out of Dartmouth and not take the hedge fund consulting jobs would be to come up with some kind of loan forgiveness program for students on need-based aid who desire to go into public service. And number two is actually advice that I got from Sarah Silverman, not personally. She was talking to an audience and I was in it. And she's you should go hear her talk. She's sick. Someone asked her a question like, doesn't it feel awesome to be like living out your dream? Like, how did you end up in this place where you can live up, where you can like do whatever you want and like still get paid for it? And I will carry this with me forever. She says, if you keep your costs really low, you can live out whatever dream you want. And I think fundraising obviously is the appalling underbelly of all of the work that we're doing. And I took that as a good lesson that there's always ways to sort of get your costs down low enough that you can make what you want happen within your budget.
I would just like to say that social work is a good profession that your wife has chosen. And I agree with obviously all the other recommendations that the speakers have just commented on. But again, there are career opportunities for people who start in a field, and there's ways in which there are career paths in these various fields, and certainly nonprofit. The world of nonprofit organizations is a very large part of our society, and there are many opportunities depending on what the person's interests are to see other career paths besides the ones that they start with. So, hopefully.
Okay, we're closing in on the end of our program, so you get one last shot at it. This must be a brilliant question that brings the house down.
No problem.
Somebody else. Your work reminds me of a quote by a woman named Margaret Farley who said the story of any one life can be told in terms of commitments. And your commitment is palpable, and as I always tell our students, it's a future that's bigger than you are. And that's why it works. Where I've seen people get into trouble is when they lose sight of the fact that their titles, their positions becomes part of their identity, as opposed to their stand being part of their identity. And in other words, I can feel in your presentation that the positions that each of you have is merely a platform upon which you live out your commitment. And I wonder, how do you not collapse those two? How do you keep them distinctive and separate from one another?
Can we get a restatement of the question?
I can give it.
Oh, sorry.
I guess what you're asking is how do you balance between, how do you strike a balance between the meaning of a position and your commitment and your work around the definition of that position. I think for me, it's very difficult. One, you're cash strapped, okay? So you have no money. Two, because you're cash strapped, you tend to do nothing but recruit people who work as team members. And your role becomes less a definition than a need for your organization. So you find, for instance, I keep saying this, as a CEO, I'm in the clinic half the time. So 50% of my time I spend seeing patients. And then I'm on the finance committee. And I'm serious, and I help the janitor with the leaking bathroom. And then I roll up my sleeves and help do some painting. So all of that for me is not very difficult because I really don't take the position that seriously. For me, it's just there's a need, and that need was filled by a person who had certain qualifications. But when you're in social, when you're working as a servant leader, this is why I use the term servant leader. You're a servant. You're serving. It's not about, oh, I'm a CEO. Nobody cares. There's a broken toilet, Dr. Achebe. What do we do about it? Oops. Okay, plug that while I call the janitor. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's not very difficult. I think it's also unique in medicine. I'm not the other honorees have, I think, far more challenging, I guess. Mine is pretty straightforward.
I think everybody up here will agree with me that fundraising keeps you humble. And that is definitely a huge part of taking a leadership role in any organization. I also think, like Chidi was saying, nonprofit and social service organizations tend to be small, and we don't have a lot of the resources and talent and money that for-profit organizations have. So we find ourselves kind of doing a lot of the jobs within the organization that keep it very real for us. 2 days ago, I was in the middle of the street arguing with a man with no teeth who couldn't read over the price of chicken out of the back of the truck, and today I'm sitting up here with these amazing people accepting this award. So, like I said, those are the things that kind of keep it all in perspective.
I think often people have the opposite problem. I feel like I have sort of the opposite problem where you've taken on something that's like so large that you kind of feel like part of you might feel like you're always failing. And it's less that like, oh yeah, I'm the director, but like, sure, I started an organization. I get to, when we first started our like student organization at EO Law School, my literal title was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and my co-founder was Secretary General, because we were like titles, whatever. But I think it's like, I think it even harder than sort of keeping your own ego out of it is sort of keeping your own ego in it, and like realizing that even though you're like sticking your finger in a waterfall, that like you're doing something, that what you're getting up and doing every day like is making something go somewhere. And I think that it's okay to take time to sit and like try to feel good about that, because that, I think, beside my flippant answer about my therapist, which is totally true, I think it's like the small victories really that keep you going.
I would just say I like this concept of a servant leader. I think the more time you are working in a nonprofit, the more that concept of a management. I happen to run a very large organization, but I think it's true if it's large or small, that role of always reminding yourself that you really are there as one of the people who's providing the service, perhaps in a different way. And in the case of my organization, I have a great deal of respect I have for the people who deal directly day in and day out with people with disabilities. These are often people that don't have advanced degrees, but have this really a wonderful capacity to be compassionate and to relate to people. And we make a real effort in our organization to honor those people and tell them that they are really the mechanism through which the service is provided that really translates that into human terms. So you always do have to remind yourself what is the mission of the organization and who is the people that really make that mission possible.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for sharing this evening, the afternoon and evening with us, and to know that we are extremely, extremely proud of you. Now I think Chris is going to come back.
Great, thank you again for all of for sharing and for all those insights. So, Dean Johnson, Vice President Ellis, and all of you all, thank you so much for your participation and involvement in today's event. There's tremendous value in our community coming together each year to celebrate, recognize, and learn from those who are making a difference around the world with their Dartmouth education. So a special thank you to everyone again for attending. I encourage you to stick around in the back of Common Ground for a reception with all the award recipients. And once again, thank you for coming and enjoy your evening.